Greetings, everyone. Welcome to the debut of the Life and the City podcast by Star Media Group. I'm your host, Aida Ahmad, and together with me is my co-host, Farid Wahab. We are excited to begin this show. Are you excited as I am, Farid?
Yes, I am. This is the topic which I've been wanting to talk about for quite some time now. It's about local governance, which I think is incredibly important, but unfortunately probably it's not talked about as much. And we have a councillor with us here today who is going to give us some insight about how local governance is done in our country.
That's right. Yes, we are excited to have our first guest. And she is the youngest female city councillor in Selangor under the helm of the Petaling Jaya City Council, MPPJ. And 24-year-old Kusaaliny Mahendran, also known as Kusha, is passionate about progressive policy making and will share her experience of the first 6 months in her stint with Life and the City. She is also one of the 5 new MPPJ councillors who were sworn in last January for the 2024-2025 term. A little background about Kusha. She has a bachelor's degree in actuarial science and a master's in public policy. Kusha, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me as the first guest. It feels like an honor.
Yes, it is, isn't it?
Yeah.
It should be.
Please tell us, which areas do you serve as Councillor, Kusha?
So I am assigned to Zone 11, which is Section 11, Section 12, Section 13. That means PPUM, you're thinking right directly opposite of PPUM is my zone.
I see. And how has it been so far?
Honestly, I have been enjoying the process. I'm not going to be a person who's like, oh, it's been so difficult. It has been, but I also believe that anything worth doing is difficult. And I think serving in PJ is also an unfair advantage in the sense that my residents are lovely and they are very strategic, they understand. The way they advocate for the things that they want is very in sync with what I also want for our PJ. And, you know, it's been so fun trying to work. So there's an IWK TAPA in Section 12. And finally, we are setting up the meeting. We've already got the TAPA approved to make it a new green space in PJ.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah,
that's great.
and we are going to make it like an urban farm. So we're going to see where we can get seed grants to get that done in Section 12. And then hopefully whole of PJ, it can still serve the whole of PJ as like a little, urban farm in the middle of the city.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Farid is excited to ask you
Yes.
something.
We've actually prepared some questions for you that we are hoping maybe you can share the insight with our audience here today. Is it alright if we just jump into it?
Yeah, let's go.
Right. So, I remember before we go into that, I just want to say a little bit. When I first started this job, I didn't know what a local councillor was. I remember being asked to cover the MPHA full board and thinking, what are councillors? But 5 years into the job, I found out what it's about, and I think I have a general idea about what a councillor does.
Oh, your first assignment was the MPAJ full board meeting. They just sent you there.
There were other assignments before that, but
Okay.
that was my first brush with local authorities. So maybe you can tell us a bit more, Kusha. What is a local government councillor?
Okay. In Malaysia, there are 3 levels of government. Many Malaysians don't really know that there are 3 levels
That's
of
right,
government. And so the lowest level of government is the local government, also in Malay known as Pihak Berkuasa Tempatan, PBT. The second layer is the state government, which where you have your aduns and your excos. And the highest layer of government is the federal government, which is where you have your MPs and your minister. Now, people are usually very familiar with the federal government. And federal government usually gets most of their attention anyway because, they spend the most amount of money. But both state and local government also have roles and have jurisdictions and make decisions that impact your life. So, for example, one decision that is given to the authority of local governments to make is land use and how much people can build, as well as what should the land be used for in the city. And this is a huge decision that will impact your daily life in the sense of, do you have enough parks to exercise at if you want to exercise? Are your walkways from your LRT station comfortable to walk from? Are your, is your development around you helping you sustain the city and its costs sufficiently?
Yeah.
And all of these things are actually these decisions are made by the local council, and these decisions are made by 24 councillors as well as 1 mayor. So it's not a singular person making a decision. The mayor is like the chairman of the board.
Right.
And the councillors are like the board members. So the chairman gets a lot of say, but the board members also can influence the direction of the flow of the decision-making process.
Right. As journalists with the Metro Desk, we cover all the city councils, right? And for myself, being at the Metro Desk for 14 years already, I understand that councillors have their daytime jobs as well. But in your opinion, is being a councillor a full-time job with the amount of work that you have to do?
See, being a councillor, the job description for each councillor is also very different.
Right.
So for me, it is very important to solve problems. But actually, that is not the actual job description written in like the councillor. When you swear in, right, your role is more focused on you as a board member of the council, you contributing to the committees that you sit in. In fact, in Penang, councils don't even have zones. So the MBPP,
right, yeah.
it's just like 24 councillors making decisions, focusing on the policy making and not on the executive. So it's separate, right? The legislative and the executive. Following up on complaints, which is very important because problems are very difficult to solve unless you get someone, on the problem following up all the time. Mm-hmm. So half of my job is actually following up things that residents come and bring to me to make sure that their problems get solved. However, this is not a written job description.
Right.
So in my opinion, how you write your job description is also up to you. What are your priorities as a councillor when you're sworn in? So in my team, it is very, the priority is very clear. 50% of your time is spent, solving problems, and the other 50% is, of course, also spent in weighing in the decisions MBBJ make.
If I can chime in a little bit,
yeah,
please.
Sure.
This is not part of the questions we've prepared for you earlier, but it's something that occurred to me as I was listening to you. You said that you have a team working with you. Is that something common? Do all councillors have a team working with them, or is it just something that you do for yourself?
So most councillors work together with their local adun, whoever the adun is in whichever state in Malaysia. So councillors usually, there's the adun who's the state government, and the local councillors are usually appointed by the suggestions of these aduns, wherever it is in Malaysia, even in Terengganu, in Kedah. And usually they work together as like a constituency. So for example, in Bukit Gasing, we work together as a constituency, as a team, to make sure that the problems in Bukit Gasing get solved.
Just to clarify, Adun is the state assembly.
Correct.
Okay.
Adun is Ali Dewan Negeri.
Right.
So usually this team is formed from there. So the Adun is usually like the head of the team and the councillors are like the lieutenant of the team. But I also understand that different people work differently. Many councillors are also very independent in the work that they do. So it really does depend on what the culture is like in that office.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I want to know, is there any specific qualification, academic qualification, work experience, anything that is required in order for someone to become a councillor?
Well, you have to be part of a political party. You can choose whichever political party that you want to be part of, but you have to be part of a political party because the person who appoints you is the Menteri Besar of Selangor. And they get suggestions from the government the parties who win the government. So for example, in Perak, whoever wins the government will suggest to the Menteri Besar that they elect who should be the councillors. And the Menteri Besar signs off the official watika. Watika is like a surat lantikan. But these suggestions are usually taken from the political parties who win and helm the government. So the only way to be a councillor, actually, the real qualification is to be part of a movement or a party.
Political movement, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So if people want to get in touch with their local councillors, where do they go? Because as journalists, we get a lot of calls from the residents who have grievances or complaints about issues in their backyard. And these are issues that are
Very
handled
real.
by the councillors, yeah. So where do people go? Where do they call, or who do they call?
So MPBJ has done us all a huge favor and uploaded all of our phone numbers on the website.
That's
so,
right, yeah.
I may miss a call, but please WhatsApp me. I will reply you. So MPBJ has listed all of our phone numbers, but different local authorities does it differently. So the councillors can decide at a committee meeting, which is their IT committee meeting, whether or not to put up all their faces and their phone numbers. So MPBJ has it, MBSJ has it, all of the Selangor local councils have it, and yeah, that's how you find your councillors in Selangor. But other states are very different.
I see.
I noticed that in my area, which is under Ampang Jaya Municipal Council, they do put up a notice board in certain roads, certain areas, notifying people of who are the councillors in their area. I wonder if PJ has the same approach.
Notice board. I guess we could decide to do. Is it like the whole Ampang Jaya has their councillor photo? Or
Certain
like,
areas in Ampang Jaya does.
I think it's a councillor initiative because
Yeah.
you can print banners with your face and also your designation, so people know how to look for you and where to look for you. But that's I think an individual thing.
Yeah.
Just now you mentioned that you solve problems. There are problems you're looking into. Maybe you can give us a brief description of what's your day to day like, and what do you do when you wake up in the morning until you finish work for the day. Like, what are your activities in a day like for a councillor?
So, other than being a councillor, I've also co-founded a think tank, Sogdem Malaysia. So my day is kind of warped between three things. One, the political party we should not name, and also being a councillor, as well as trying to get this think tank up and running from the ground. So it's kind of a mush of all these three things, and it is not healthy at all. I'm not condoning this, but right now I'm working at 15-hour days. But it's like a short-term thing, it's like for the next 2 years until the think tank is properly up and running, and then I will like let go of the work. But right now I have to do the work in the beginning stage. And so in the morning, I spend a lot of time actually reading and writing for my think tank. And when we have meetings, so MPBJ has meetings and they'll send you a calendar in the start of the month. Every 1st June, you get your calendar and you know when are your meetings. And your meetings are usually on weekdays, and it's not every day. So your meetings are maybe Monday morning, Tuesday evening, Wednesday morning. So if I have meetings, then morning I go to the meeting. But if I don't have meetings, then I actually spend a lot of the mornings writing and reading. And then in the afternoon, after I have lunch is usually when I go for my site visits or looking at this. Even though the sun is terrible, but after lunch, that lunch slump,
Yeah.
you might as well, be up and about looking at things. Plus, my residents are great. They'll send me a location pin. I don't really have to get out from the car. I'll just drive by it, take a photo, send the officer. So sometimes they even send me the MPBJ Aduan number. So it's just like going to the ground to see if it's solved already or not. Because
Yeah.
the officer hasn't updated you if the problem has solved. So you just take a small drive, look at
Yeah.
the thing and see how is it looking.
Yep.
So
Thanks
that's what
to-
I do usually after lunch for like about an hour. Just follow up on all my different things people have reached out to me about. And then usually there's a meeting in the afternoon lah. So then I go for that meeting, and then at night I also spend a lot of time campaigning because I also have elections to win in my political party.
Sounds like you have your plate full.
Yes,
Kusha.
it is very full.
Please tell us, how exactly are councillors chosen?
Okay, so how is it chosen in Selangor? Maybe it's a way that is more familiar to me lah. In Selangor, what happens is everybody from the political parties who win, they nominate their councillor list. So they will decide, the leadership will decide each party gets how many councillors.
Right.
After the leadership decides each party gets how many councillors, it goes back to their own political parties, and they get their leadership of the individual political parties to nominate a list. So that means, for example, political party A gets 25 councillors all over Selangor. They will nominate all 25 councillors and the local council next to it. That's how they get elected. I mean, not elected, appointed.
Right.
Just to add to that question, who actually comes up with that list for your party? Who comes up with that list, and how do you get chosen to be on that list?
It's the state committee leadership. So the
Okay.
party has elections every 2 years, and they form a state committee of 20 people. And these 20 people make a decision on the list.
Is that MKN?
No. MMKN is like the EXCO, but this
I
is
see.
like the individual party state committee.
Okay.
So the Selangor State Committee of the DAP makes the list for my appointment.
Right. We're curious, do councillors receive any funding?
Yes, we have an allocation of 150,000 ringgit. If you think about it, when you think about repair work, it's actually peanuts compared to what needs to be done.
Yeah.
A small repair also will cost you 50,000 ringgit, and but yeah, you can still use it very well. Like for example, I'm trying to start this urban community thing and using it as a seed fund to grow something from the ground. So I prefer to use the allocation for something that will have lipat kali ganda, and I rather wait for the repairs, wait for MPBJ to schedule them, and keep bugging MPBJ to do it, but let them spend the money on the repairs. If not, I'll do 3 repairs and my allocation is finished.
So
Right.
that allocation is for a year.
The allocation is for a year, correct?
Okay. So are you required to finish that amount in a year, or do you have to report back to MBPJ how you spend it?
Oh, it's not given to me at the beginning of the term. So
Okay.
every time you want to do something,
Okay.
you do the program or you do the initiative, then you have to write claims to MPPJ. Then actually Dato' Banda approves your claim or doesn't approve your claim. So there is a risk that your claim may not be approved if they don't think that what you did is a suitable thing to be claimed for.
Right.
And so you put in your claims and you can claim up to 150,000 ringgit, but you can spend much lesser too. Usually this is not the case. We need money for many things, so it's usually zeroed out by the end of the year.
That is true.
Yeah.
Because you mentioned before we started about focus on urban planning in policy research. Would you mind just explaining that?
Yeah. So under my think tank, we focus on three things: democracy and governance, climate action, and also urban planning and housing. Urban planning and housing actually to me is very important. When I did my masters, I took urban economics as a subject that was very important to me because I did see myself in a role, no matter where I move politically, as someone who still contributes in a city, no matter at which level of government. It feels like, naturally I am leaning towards that way. And because I will contribute in a city, it felt like it is important to see how I can add value as a policymaker to my residents. Because it's important to add value as as you're doing your programs. It's very important to keep your residents engaged too, because you want them to come out, you want them to see you, you want them to talk to you so they can reach out to you easily. But it's
right,
also
yeah.
very important to add value in these meetings, and it's very important to add value in how you lobby to get certain things. So, for example, in this research, one of the things that I was looking at for this urban planning thing was how MPPJ's funding is only like close to 10% of DBKL's funding. And yet, we are doing so much more, and we cover a bigger surface area. We cover from all the way from PJ World Town up to Sungai Buloh, to some parts of, Selayang, until the border of Selayang is
Right.
an MPS. So that's how far we go. And the square area we cover. And I was also thinking about how we should break up. Should we break MPPJ into two to make it two different efficient local authorities? And when looking at models around the world and how much their local councils spend per resident, for example.
Yeah.
And it is very, very littly looked at in Malaysia, in my opinion. I feel like the some think tanks who do look at it maybe find it difficult to reach to the relevant people to receive the information. But I'm in a complicated position where the information is available to me,
Yeah.
and the other information for best practices around the world, you can find them on the internet too. So doing these comparisons have helped me see and understand that local government's constraints, a lot of it stem from not having enough money.
Right.
And many problems can be solved if we just raise funds. But how do we do that? How do we do that in a way that doesn't burden the residents? We need development charges. If there's a development, we must take 30% of the sale or the transfer of the thing. So, yeah, things like this. How do you increase funds progressively? You tax the people who are making the money. And so residents can still enjoy a subsidized cost
Yeah.
of their services provided. So MPPJ has not raised our tax for the last 16 years. I'm not sure if it's still, capable to sustain, but
We shall see.
Yeah, in 16 years, a lot of businesses have even feel the cost rising.
Yeah,
But we have
we all feel
stretched
it.
the dollar
Yep.
to the maximum. But the reason we are able to do this is because we have councillors in place who really want to see how the rest of the world is doing it and how to maximize the dollar and add
Yeah.
value.
Yeah. And Farid, as we in our daily job cover a lot of community issues, right? We are curious who or what groups in the community do councillors work with to somewhat establish a cohesive ecosystem to benefit the people?
So we work with various groups. There's of course the RA, the Resident Association, where we take care of their parks and their play parks as well as their roads, the trees, the drains. But there's also communities like the Surau and the temple and the churches who need different things at different time. And for example, maybe they need to block the road because they're having a festival. And so, we also work very closely with these temple committees. And we also work closely with Friends of Sungai Penchala, which is like a resident group which looks over the river. One time, so after we did the nice Sungai, actually someone someone walked in the river trail that we built and saw pollution,
Yeah.
and they alerted us, and the authority actually managed to summon the person who released the discharge because it was done within 5 minutes.
Yeah.
So they alerted us, and we immediately told Jabatan Alam Sekitar, and they immediately came on the ground, and it was an immediate action. So we also work with the community in this way. So community can be very interested in where they live, but they can also be interested in a nature that is nearby them. So there's like Friends of Kota Damansara,
Friends
there's
of Taman Aman.
yeah, Friends of Taman Aman. They can be very interested also in the recreation around them. And so we work with these kind of groups.
Yeah. So, being the youngest councillor, it must be quite an experience dealing with your colleagues who are much older than you, right? And recently, another MPPJ councillor and your colleague, Nalina Nair, posted on her social media announcing an internship program at MPPJ, which is really interesting, where the successful applicants can experience what councillors do and learn the ropes of policy making and public services, to name a few. I think this is interesting, don't you think, Clarit?
I think it is incredibly interesting because in my line of work, I've spoken to a number of young adults who don't really know what local councils are. I've
Yeah.
asked them, do you know what local councils are? Do you know what they do? Many of them said, no, we don't. And I think that has to do with the fact that a lot of young people are either living with their parents or renting elsewhere, in which case things like assessment taxes, local council services are handled by, or the payments are handled by their parents or the homeowners that they are renting from. I think generally, from my observation, people start to care about local governance the moment they start owning their own property.
Yeah.
Because that's when you start paying assessment taxes. That's when you start caring about your roads. That's when you start caring about the trees, because you're paying for all this. So
Yeah.
you would want to know, where is all that money going to? So that's my take on it, based
Right.
on what I've seen from my own personal observation.
Yeah, that's true. And take town halls, for example. We see mostly middle-aged and the older people attending these meetings to have a dialogue with their local government representatives. But it's important, I think we feel, for youths to know that if they don't like something that is happening in their community, they can change it by actively participating in the process, right? By getting involved. What are your thoughts on this, Kusha?
I completely agree. In fact, I want to plug in Nalina's interview a little bit more. Nalina is working on very awesome things. So she's also the chair of the landscape committee, which is now she's going to look into how we're going to hire a arborist firm or a consultancy to consult on all the trees in PJ just one round to see if there are any other risky trees left. And she's going to be working on the tree stuff after this. And she also is the chair of the Kesihatan committee, which is looking into the animal spay and neuter. And we're looking to bring a new initiative to PJ, and she's actually working on it right now. So I really do want to plug in this internship, and I want to encourage anybody who wants to apply to just take 2 months experience the way. To work closely with Nalina, I think, is a privilege because she's chairing 2 very important committees.
That's
and she's
right,
also
yeah.
very highly capable.
Yeah.
And I think that she will put you in a position where you can add value to her research while you learn in the process. And so she wants to adopt the model that they have done in Penang here in PJ with the spay and neutering. And so it's very important that opportunities like this exist in the first place, because even if a youth is interested but have no avenue to experience this process, it's very tricky.
Yeah, that's true.
But I also believe that because we have some young people now, we're starting to trickle in much more young people. Because you hang out with the people of your same age.
Yeah.
If you say all the councillors are 50-year-olds, then if you want to have a conversation, you can still bring up your issue to them, but they may not feel as relatable.
Right.
But when you see younger councillors like myself, Nalina, Wailu and Wekiat, Nalina and Wekiat are in their 30s, me and Wailu are in our 20s, it's easier to reach out to us. And also, we totally understand what you mean by the walkway should be shaded, for example. I understand the complaint. We may not have the money to complete it in this year, but it's definitely something that I will actively look into and have like a 5-year plan to have the complete covered walkways from the LRT station, for example.
Yes, the last mile connectivity has been a big issue recently. Yeah.
Yeah, and so maybe, with the age difference, like even when I did my internship in the Bukit Gasing office, I was taking the train and I was walking over from the LRT Taman Jaya every day during the internship. And so different people have different lived experiences, and because they have different lived experiences and different view of the world, I think it contributes to a much more, rigorous policy making process. It's much more vibrant because there are people who care about different things and they care about it very passionately.
I have an additional question, if I may. Because of your relatively younger age, do you think has that have any impact on the way that people communicated with you, or receive any of your views?
So I'm very lucky because all my residents were so supportive. The day I was sworn in, we were not sure which zone I was going to, so that my WhatsApp group was flooded. Not only my WhatsApp group, my entire WhatsApp was flooded with, "Are you coming to our section? Are you coming to our section? Congratulations, we're so happy for you." And I remember reading one message, it's like, "We're so happy for you and we're so happy for our community because we have someone who not only has the heart in the right place, but also has the intellectual capacity to bring these changes that she wants to bring." And I remember thinking why would they think that, they've had maybe 3 to 5 interactions with me. Why would someone take that time to write that heartfelt message? It was from a number that I had not saved. I think I helped them maybe 2 years ago to solve some small problem when I was working in the Adun office. And it really touched my heart in a way that actually people appreciate the work that you do. Mm-hmm. As long as you are willing to hold yourself accountable to the work that you do, people do appreciate it. And in PJ, I am lucky and I'm privileged that maybe the gender and the age bias is much lower.
Yeah.
Compared to maybe if I was serving in Hulu Burnham, for example.
That's right.
They might feel that, an older person with authority might have a better serving capacity. But here, I feel like my youth is actually appreciated, it's welcome. My energy is very much, the residents, they're very much happy to interact and call for complaints.
That's right.
Every time I solve a complaint, sometimes they also send me, "Oh, thanks, you're such an angel." It's like a very a uncle, auntie, grandma relationship. They're very sweet to you. It's not in a way that it's undermining your authority, but in a way that is very grateful, very appreciative, but also very empowering. For both of us, I am willing to listen to them and they are also willing to listen to me.
Yeah.
It's a two-way relationship.
Yeah, and I think people appreciate fresh perspectives, right? In the community, dealing with their backyard issues. We want to know, what are some of the challenges that you have faced and how did you overcome them?
I think, of course, while most of the residents are great, some people have had concerns that have irked them for a long time. And maybe the issue has, it's like a thorn in your skin. It's hurt you for a long time. So maybe the way they approach is very aggressive. Mm-hmm. And while we come in from a mindset of very willing to solve their problem, in the process of listening to the problem, they don't actually manage to explain their problem clearly, but they give you an emotional outpour of how they have been feeling, which is, I sympathize with it because I understand that it has annoyed them to the point that they can't even explain themselves well. Yeah. They're just very angry. But they're angry at the wrong person. I was just sworn in. But yeah, I was just sworn in. It's not really at my zone. It's more overall. Sometimes when you receive a phone call, maybe you're in the middle of driving somewhere and then you pick up the phone and then someone's just angrily yelling at you. Maybe it's not even your zone. It's not even Bukit Kasing. Maybe it's not even PJ because our numbers are available online, right?
I think we go through the same thing.
Yes, all the time.
So I think the biggest challenge is this, because your number is public, you're a public person, and I do want people to reach me easily because the easier they reach me, the faster we can solve their problem. But at the same time, it also comes with a lot of people being angry, sad. Mm-hmm. I've even had people call me and crying in Tamil, and I was like, I can't really do anything for you. You're in Klang. Okay, let's see how to work it out. Let me connect you to your MP office in Klang to see how they can help you. So this is what we do. When people contact us from different spaces, we try to link them back. A secure connection back to the MP office, not contact them and then the connection is lost. We do really try to do it, but I find this quite challenging and very exhausting, honestly.
It sounds like you have plenty on your plate, and I'm sure there have been a number of programs that you've worked on. Maybe you can tell us, is there any maybe you can tell us this, is there any particular program that you've worked on or you've done in the past that has particularly stuck in your mind?
Yes. Okay. I want to talk about our river because I feel like this is something that is an initiative truly from the bottom of my heart. I started working on Sungai Penchala actually 4 years ago, much longer before I became a councillor, when I was an intern actually. And so I remember we had a conversation with the Adun YB Rajiv at that time. He was like, pick an initiative. What do you want to do? And I was like, I want to clean up our river. He looked at me and he was like, that's a very bold thing to say. He's like, that's a very bold thing to say. But actually, if you can pledge to clean the river and we can figure out how to do it, if we can increase the water class to the point that people can use it as recreation, it'll be a great end goal.
It's a big undertaking. Yeah.
Yes, it's a big undertaking. It's a big thing to say publicly because it really is like holding yourself accountable at the end of another 5 or 10 years if it doesn't happen. This is our new initiative. And so cleaning the river is not at all a straightforward process because
Yeah,
there's
sure it's
chemical expelling stuff, there is the physical expulsion
pollution,
and
yeah.
all of that, and there's also an angle that the river is treated like our backyard in PJ.
Yeah.
Our Sungai Penchala is always facing the back of something. It is at the sides of it are overgrown, and I was like, we need to change this. We need to put the river at the center of this, and we need to not only protect but appreciate our river.
Yeah.
And actually, people want more green space, and people are looking for green spaces every day. Even if you get to have a 15-minute walk there, it's great for people in general. And when we undertook this, there was 4 segments to the project. One is cleaning the water itself. And then the other one is like to make sure that physical debris come out. And the third one was to increase the visibility of the river and to like make the river stand out. So we were like, okay, we need a river trail. How have the countries around the world done it? They've put like 2 river trails where people can walk on both sides of the river,
Yeah.
and that's how it works. And so the first stage was, okay, we were trying to get grants from the federal government because it's very expensive to stabilize the slope and build the river trail. So now we've built it for 700 meters. It is from opposite OK Mart, Piccadilly in
Right.
section 14,
Yep.
opposite OK Mart Piccadilly in section 14, right up to Toyota in section 19. There's like a 700-meter walkway.
That's right. I've taken a walk there, and it is hot.
It is hot. There's no tree covering
There's no
it.
trees,
But that's
yeah.
all the money we had to do a bare cement to really, we only had 400,000 and we maximized that 400,000 to make that cement and the railing first. And the Sungai Penchala is 3.1 kilometers long. And after that, the top of it is in Bukit Kiara, but in PJ it's about 3.1 kilometers long. And I'm very happy to say that in our section 1951 and 51A draft,
Yeah.
we have mandated that if people along the river want to rebuild or want to tear down their building and change to the current things that we have given them, they have to rebuild the walkway and they have to give us some amount of their land space to build a big enough walkway so people can actually walk
That's right.
at the
Yeah.
river. And so this is not only prioritized in a way like we're still looking for grants to build it bits and parts. It's like as PJ develops over the next 10 years, this will be done because it's mandated by the local government for it to be done. And this was something that I actively pushed alongside YB Rajiv, Adun Bukit Gasing, and it's in. It's the draft rancangan, so it's 12A. The public feedback for the first round just closed. There will be a second round public feedback. Don't worry, we are not afraid of public consultation. In fact, we encourage it, and
That's
we want
good.
to hear from you.
Yeah.
And we will be honest with you that as a local council, we cannot do everything ourselves because we have a budget constraint.
Yeah.
Unless we increase assessment taxes by 3 to 4 times, but development is a good way for us to prioritize the nature. And as long as it's done sustainably and accountably and transparently, I think we are not afraid to face the public and we are very, very open to constructive criticism.
Yeah.
There will
And-
be a second round display.
Yeah, and it takes a village, right?
It
and
does.
the community plays a big role in making a change or changes, right? So that's why we have the feedback from the public. How has being a councillor changed your perspectives on the local community and government issues?
I think that honestly, PJ has a much more active local community compared to where I grew up. I grew up in Ipoh, and I'm sure we had a Rukun Tetangga. I'm sure the Rukun Tetangga did something. I went to like one Merdeka thing, I think. But I think in PJ, we are lucky. I hope other places in Malaysia can also come up to this point where actually every resident, they do feel some level of, this is our community, this is our space.
Yeah.
They might take different levels of actions. Maybe the action can just be, joining your resident WhatsApp group to get in the know of what's going on and being in the loop. But the action can go as far as contesting for the chairman of the resident association to have your 3 pledges. Okay, this is the 3 things I want to be as the chairman of the resident association. So the participation are at different levels, and some people are just quite happy to highlight their problems to the councillor while not taking any position or any leadership. And the role that the community plays is it's a role where not only you are the bridge between your resident group and the committee and the councillor, you also get to suggest how to, spend the money, because a lot of the time we are looking for suggestions. So in section 14, they want to change their badminton court to a pickleball court. And I was like, yeah, if the community did not have a strong representation, how would they have, brainstormed this idea together as a community, have the resident association of section 14 write in a letter together, because they have all decided as a community that they now want a pickleball court instead of a basketball court.
Pickleball, that's it's a cross between tennis and squash, am I right?
It's a low barrier entry sport. So my
It's
resident,
really picking up a lot of traction. A lot
yeah,
of
and the
people are
first court is
interested
going to
in
be
it.
in SS1 in Kampung Tungku, and hopefully
that's
we can
great.
have the second one. But yeah, so things like this, like having a participatory say that can actually change your neighborhood, is very important. And also, it's important to people like me, and it's important for your representative to
Yeah.
know actually what the community wants.
I have another question, if I may. MBPJ has made your phone number publicly available on its website, so I'm sure you are flooded, no pun intended, you are flooded with requests from people every day.
I'm flooded,
weekly,
stormed,
if not
whichever you
daily.
prefer.
So I'm sure you, at some points, you have to prioritize which ones you want to complete first, which ones you have to, you probably have to postpone it for a little bit. So how do you prioritize? What criteria do you use?
Actually, it's just like a WhatsApp label system. So now I have WhatsApp business, no more WhatsApp personal, because I cannot do it.
Right.
So there's like a label system in the WhatsApp business. So there's like complaints, and then there's like highly urgent complaints. Highly urgent complaints are, for example, like maybe a tree fell and is blocking your driveway and there's no way to get out of the house. That's like a very highly urgent complaint that needs to be solved within the next few hours. So then you keep calling the officers in the next few hours to solve it. But a lot of the complaints are actually, if you put it into MPPJ system, 95% of the complaints will get solved. The 5% that doesn't get solved, I will follow up. So my residents are quite independent. They actually send me an Adwan number. They've already made the complaint, and the Adwan number they send me is usually like, okay, maybe if 3 months there's like no action from MPPJ, then I'll continue to follow up in MPPJ. But so far from what we have seen, 95% of the complaint, once it goes through the system, it gets solved automatically. It
Right.
might take some time, maybe a month and a half, but it will eventually be added to the list of things to be solved.
So this would be counted as some of the methods you use to communicate with your residents,
correct.
right? And technology definitely makes it easier.
It does.
Is it only via WhatsApp?
It's WhatsApp, it's face-to-face, it's also calls for some complicated issues. They walk into our service center every Wednesday from 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. So I'm also there to listen to them in real life, because different people have different methods of communication, and I'm open to receiving it in
Yeah.
the way that they prefer.
Wonderful. Well, this
They
is
also email me a lot. Yeah. So I have to
Emails.
check my emails, I have to check my WhatsApp, I have to check my calls, and just make sure, like I don't miss anything. Then, people will say, oh, I called my councillor, but no reply.
Yeah, I think people prefer to communicate via different channels,
Yeah.
right? Some people like WhatsApp, some people like emails. But anything else you want to add, Farid? Because this has been an insightful
Yes, it has
conversation,
been.
right? Any extra questions for our young councillor?
I think we pretty much covered everything today. It has been an insightful conversation. It's nice to know how are our complaints being handled, how do local councillors respond to our queries.
Yeah,
And
for
yeah.
sure. Any parting insights you would like to share with our listeners before we end this show, Kusha?
How your cities are inherited, right? No
Yep.
city in Malaysia is perfect. All the city that we have is a mix of decisions that have been made for the last 65 years is what is today. But the decisions we make today will shape the cities for the next 50 to 65 years.
That's right.
It's not something that you might see immediately. While there are some things you can see immediately, many things are put in place for the next 10, 20, 30 years. If you don't have a say now, 30 years later it will be too late to have a say.
That's right, and that's why youths play an important role,
Yes.
because they are the ones.
I'm building
who
the
are going
city
to-
that will be
yes,
perfect
they're
for
going-
my retirement, you
That's
know?
right.
Like, I want it to be age friendly. I
Yeah.
want it to be walkable. I don't want to have to climb up pedestrian bridges and go back down. I want
Yep.
on-road crossings. So, you have an opportunity, a very real opportunity. Like, for example, my number is available, Nalina's number is available, Wailun's number is available, even Waycat is also available. All these phone numbers are available on the website. You have an opportunity to talk to these people. You have an opportunity to reach out to us. And please do, because we want to build a city that works for all of us together. We want a city that we are proud of 20 to 30 years later, not a city that we look out and feel like, you know.
That is
and
true.
Our city needs a lot of protecting. The climate is getting quite errant and we can't really predict what's going to happen next. And you can have a say in that.
That's right.
Yeah.
And
Apply for Nalina's internship.
Yes, and please tell us what is the website that people can visit to view your numbers.
Okay, so you can just Google Ali Majlis MPPJ. Depending on where your local council is. So for example, if you're MBSA, you just Google Ali Majlis MBSA. Just Google this, the website should pop up immediately. Anywhere in Selangor, if you should be able to find the website.
That's great. Well, once again, it's been a pleasure having you on our first podcast episode, Kusha. And we wish you all the best in
Thank
your
you.
future endeavors and as our local government representative. Thanks for listening, everyone. The Life and the City podcast can be viewed on www.thestar.com.my/metro.